Well, I think it's 6 o'clock, and we'll go ahead and get our meeting started tonight. Good evening, and thank you very much for attending tonight's meeting. My name is Chad Edwards, and I'm the Vice President of Planning and Development here at Trinity Metro. This team is very excited to bring this project to you and all the updates that we have available. This is a culmination of a 15-month preliminary engineering and environmental effort, and a lot of work has gone into the preparation of this particular meeting. We have a great staff available here tonight to share with you our current project status and to answer questions along the way. One of those great staff members is John Tipton, who is our chief engineer, and he's here to also say a few welcoming words, and then we'll get into the presentation. John?
All right, thank you, Chad. Yeah, I am excited to work on the extension project to the medical center area. I am new to Trinity Metro, but I'm not new to the TEXRail project. I initially worked on the PEIS that extended all the way down to Southwest Fort Worth that went through the medical center area. And I also served as program manager on the implementation of the 27-mile corridor, TEXRail corridor that extends from the TMP station to DFW Airport. And with that, I will turn it over to Paulette.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. All right, I'm going to start with our agenda for the meeting. We're going to have had a few introductions already, and I'm going to introduce the rest of our team that's here in just a minute. My name is Paulette Vanderkamp. I am the project manager and for the team. And I also am not new to this project. I worked on the initial project as well, leading as a project manager earlier on that project. The rest of our agenda, John is going to go through our existing Trinity Metro service, an extension project overview. I'm going to continue with an overview of our scope, our schedule, and get into a little bit more detail on the engineering overview. Near Southside Station, we'll go into that in a little bit more detail, our environmental assessment or EA, public involvement, our next steps, and then we're going to open it up at the end of the presentation for questions and comments. So again, I'm Paulette Vanderkamp. Melinda Jensen is our environmental lead. Lee Hornsby is leading our public involvement. Station planning lead is Kirk Milliken, and leading noise and vibration analysis is Dave Towers. So the purpose of this meeting is to provide an overview of the project, kind of get everybody back up to speed. Our last public meeting was held on April the 15th, and this is to kind of give everybody an overview of the project in general and catch you up to speed on things that have been taking place since that last meeting, to provide a summary of potential impacts and benefits of the project now that we've completed our environmental assessment, to seek input on the preferred alternative, and to provide an opportunity for comment on project impacts and the benefits, not only through this meeting, but other venues as well that you can comment through, and we'll go into that in some detail later on. Well, actually, she's going to go into that now. Lee?
Good evening, everyone. We are recording this meeting and we will place it on the project website. The address is on your screen, and only team members will speak tonight, so we can help minimize the sound issues and streamline information. Those who are presenting will be muted. So we do encourage you, though, to submit questions through the chat feature or Zoom. Following the meeting, our team members will try to respond to all the questions, either by responding in the chat forum as we go forward or verbally at the end. So if you have never used Zoom, you may provide comments and questions through the chat mechanism, which for most computers will be at the bottom of your screen. If your name does not appear in the participant key, and I think most do, we just ask that you provide it too. Please be certain to send your comment by selecting everyone so that we can ensure that we're responding back to everyone. So some people might have the same question you do, and that'll also help streamline the process. So how to share comments. The comment period for this project began on November 1st, and it will remain open through November 30th. There's various ways to submit comments. You may do so through the U.S. Postal Service, by leaving a voice recording at the number listed on the screen, or by visiting our website and posting comments there. In addition, you may send an email. We will have those details at the end of the meeting too, and remind you of that. So all the information is about comments is also on the website. Now on to public involvement, public outreach. We'd like to recap some of the outreach activities we've conducted so far for this project. For example, we held our first public meeting in the spring, followed by several stakeholder meetings, as well as meetings with consulting parties. We launched a website early on, and we've continued various coordination meetings. Public involvement is a key importance to this project. And we can move on to the next slide. Receiving your input helps our project team identify areas of interest and concern, and to garner a strong understanding of what your community needs are. So please be sure to share the comments. And John will take it from here.
All right, thank you, Lee. Trinity Metro is a regional transportation provider that provides public transportation to enhance the mobility needs in Tarrant County. This is provided through a myriad of different aspects, including fixed route buses, access paratransit, zip zones, which is an on-demand ride sharing type feature, and we currently have three zones in Tarrant County, and this provides that last mile connection. We also have a robust van pool program. We're partners with Dallas Area Rapid Transit on the Trinity Railway Express, which is a 34-mile commuter rail line that runs between the CBDs of Fort Worth and Dallas, and TEXRail, which is a 27-mile commuter rail line that connects the CBD of Fort Worth with Terminal B at DFW International Airport. Next slide. A little bit about TEXRail. As I mentioned before, it's a 27-mile commuter rail line that opened in January of 2019. There's 9 stations on the line. 4 are in Fort Worth, or in the city of Fort Worth. 2 are in the city of North Richland Hills. 1 is in the city of Grapevine, and there's 2 at DFW International Airport. 1 being the DFW North Airport Station that provides parking ride lot, and then there's the Terminal B station that does not provide parking ride amenities. Next slide. The extension project is a 2.1 mile extension from the Texas and Pacific station to the near Southside station. The FTA authorized us to use remaining grant funds from our original full funding grant agreement in March 2020 for the extension of to the medical center. The current project, with this PEEIS effort, began in August of 2020, and the completion deadline is December of 2021. Next slide. This map depicts the alignment. The alignment is shown in blue. The extension will go westward from the Fort Worth, Texas and Pacific station along the Dallas subdivision of the Union Pacific Railroad, then do a 90-degree turn and head due south adjacent to the Fort Worth Western Railroad. And then at around Mistletoe Boulevard, we will transition onto property that is currently owned by Baylor, Scott and White, where we will have our terminal station for the near Southside station. And with that, I will turn it back over to Paulette.
Thank you, John. All right, the scope of our project, I'm going to go through in a little bit of detail what we've been working on. Like Chad mentioned, for the 15 months that we've been working on the project, we have completed a lot of railroad coordination. As John mentioned, this project operates mostly in existing freight right-of-way. We've completed our 15 and now our 30% design plans. We've completed our environmental analysis with FTA as our lead agency, and Melinda is going to go into that in a little bit more detail later in the presentation. Station area planning, our station layout and amenities, and transit-oriented development, the potential at the station. Kirk will go into that later in the presentation, and then a little bit more on our public involvement and stakeholder outreach. Our current project schedule, this is the same schedule that we've had up on the project website and that we presented back in April when we had that meeting on April 15th. We've completed final conceptual engineering at a 30% level and the environmental assessment, both completed in October, which allowed us to come out to the public with our 30-day comment period. That's going to be the full month of November. Again, with the meeting this evening, kind of a halfway point to elicit comments and provide an overview of the project. And then it's anticipated that we will have a finding of no significant impact, or a FONSI, about midway through the month of December. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on the conceptual engineering. Again, freight railroad coordination has been key as we work on the MOU, the agreements that are needed from the railroads and major stakeholders. Stakeholder coordination, specifically for engineering, I'm speaking of here with the city, TxDOT, North Texas Tollway Authority, Baylor Scott White, all key stakeholders on our engineering review. 15 and 30% conceptual engineering plans have been completed. As I mentioned, those plans are an appendix to the EA that's up on the project website, include detail on track, structures, station, drainage, utilities, traffic, and roadway. So because we're not able to meet in person, we're meeting virtually this evening, and we can't spread out a bunch of plans and go through and kind of point things out on a set of plans. I'm going to talk a little bit about what our key conceptual and engineering challenges have been, and then I'm going to pull up some schematic drawings and step through the corridor with a little bit more detail. But those key challenges include the operations, how we exist and operate within railroad right-of-way, extending our track on UP mainline, a new 5th track we will be constructing for UP, the turn that John mentioned from the UP corridor to turn south onto the Fort Worth and Western corridor, a new bridge, a new UP bridge that will be constructed for this project with a temporary shoe fly bridge, the clearance at Rosedale Bridge, the planned and proposed quiet zone at Mistletoe Boulevard, and then finally with the station platform location. So I'm going to pull up these drawings here, and I'm going to start by orienting everyone. This is north to the top of your screen, the top of this sheet. This is Interstate 30, East and West Interstate 30 here, the existing TMP station. And the blue line is existing Trinity, the existing TEXRail alignment, excuse me. And those black lines indicate the right-of-way limits. So this is the existing TMP station. The magenta line is the proposed alignment for the TEXRail extension. And as I move to the west here, these red lines are the existing UP tracks, and there are 4 in operation in this area. And I'll talk a little bit about how we keep those all in operation as we operate in this right-of-way. So coming out of the station, TEXRail will operate on a separate track within the UP right-of-way, as you can see here. And as we travel to the west, just to the east of Henderson, The TEXRail track will join the most northern track of UP. We call that Mainline 1 here. And because we have to keep 4 tracks in operation at all time for UP, this green track here on the south side of those 4 tracks will be constructed by the TEXRail project so that there are 4 active UP tracks at all times. So while the TEXRail is operating on that most northern track through this area, UP will have the operational of the 4th track here on the south side of the corridor. So we just get on the west side of Summit, you can see here that that track peels off of that northern UP track onto its own alignment again within the right of way. And the new track being constructed will transition back onto the existing track, again, allowing 4 tracks to be in operation at all time. John mentioned the tight turn that we have here under Chisholm Trail Parkway. This is a 25-mile-an-hour restricted curve as the TEXRail alignment turns and heads south into Fort Worth and Western right-of-way. This is a new bridge being constructed to the south of an existing bridge. All the tracks will be shifted by 2 tracks to the north. This is the temporary shoe fly bridge here on the north side of the corridor. This will be constructed and then taken down and demolished once all the construction is complete. Once this new 2-track bridge here to the south is constructed, and all the tracks will be shifted back to their current alignment. I do want to mention this bridge here does have some historical significance, this UP bridge, and Melinda's going to give you a little bit more detail on that on her slides. So I'm going to pull up another drawing here. This is oriented in a little bit different view. North is basically to the right side of the screen and east is to the bottom of the screen. But this is that big turn, big tight turn. This is the bridge that just pointed out that will be reconstructed. And TEXRail track will come into the Fort Worth and Western right-of-way and adjacent to the right-of-way with no less than 20 feet between the 2 track centers, basically in this area. I mentioned the pinch point that we had, the clearance at Rosedale. The alignment then swings a little bit further to the east in the second span here for Rosedale because we couldn't fit it in the same span as Fort Worth and Western, so it swings out a little bit here at Rosedale and then comes back closer to the Fort Worth and Western track at the crossing of Mistletoe, which is a quiet zone planned for this project, proposed for this project. I will mention, though, that there is a city project that's already been kicked off for a quiet zone at this crossing, and that project will implement that quiet zone in advance of TEXRail. So there will be a quiet zone, kind of 2 different projects where TEXRail will come in and make some modifications for the second track here at this crossing. So as we head south, the alignment turns off of the Fort Worth and Western right-of-way and onto Baylor Scott White's property, which is all of this property here. So we have 2 tracks. It splits with 2 tracks, one on either side of the platform. And this is the platform area and both those tracks that you see in the magenta color, showing the proposed parking and bus turnaround. And with that, I am going to turn this over to Kirk, and he's going to go into just a little bit more detail about the station layout and the amenities in that area.
Okay, thank you. On this slide, the near Southside station site is bounded by Mistletoe Boulevard on the north, which is to the right of the slide, Fort Worth and Western Railroad to the west. To the south is Baylor All Saints, Baylor Scott and White and All Saints Medical Center. And at the south end of the site is an existing hospital staff parking area. Most of the hospital staff enter the hospital at the south end. What's also existing there are the existing Leslie Streets and Morphy Streets. And there are some existing house foundations which still remain, but most of the site has been cleared. At the northwest corner of the site is the stormwater outfall line structure for Leslie Creek. The station site, as Paulette pointed out, you see the station platform, which will be located to the east of the Fort Worth and Western right-of-way, approximately 650 feet south of Mistletoe Boulevard. The platform will be a 225-foot long by 25-foot wide center platform with TEXRail tracks on both sides, similar to the platform at the TNT station. Leslie Street off of Mistletoe Boulevard will be reconfigured to bring Trinity Metro buses up to the bus platform east and parallel to the TEXRail platform. 3 bus drop-off bays will be provided. Buses will turn around in a cul-de-sac to the south and will exit as they came in on Leslie Street. Leslie Street also provides access for Trinity Metro transit passengers to access a surface parking area for 100 vehicles. To the south of the Trinity Metro passenger parking area is a separated parking area for hospital employee parking, replacing the hospital employee parking lost due to the construction of the station. The TEXRail station platform is accessed from the bus platforms by 2 at-grade crosswalks at the north and south ends of the platforms, and at both crosswalks are entry kiosks welcoming TEXRail patrons. The station is accessed from the adjacent Mistletoe Heights neighborhood along the sidewalk at Mistletoe Boulevard. Hospital employees arriving by bus or TEXRail will access the hospital at the south end of the hospital. Visitors to the hospital will use the Mistletoe Boulevard sidewalk up to 8th Avenue to enter the main entrance, hospital entrance there. Also, this route provides access to the adjacent Magnolia Street mixed use area to the east of 8th Avenue. The station side areas not accessed or not utilized directly for the TEXRail platform and tracks will remain available for future transit-oriented development. The following design elements are from the Smithfield TEXRail station in North Richland Hills and form the basis of design for the near Southside station. Station signage will be located at, as you see here on the left, will be located at the intersection of Mistletoe Boulevard and Leslie Street. There's the covered entry kiosks at the north and south crosswalks and the ends of the platform. Only one entry kiosk will have the elevated signage to identify the TEXRail station from Mistletoe Boulevard. On the platform is a 60-foot long covered canopy with signage, windscreens, seating, security cameras, emergency phones, and electronic messaging notifying of upcoming train arrivals. Here's a sketch of the station. The view is looking south from underneath the north entry kiosk with its ticket vending machine. Station platform access is across the tracks at grade at the north and south entry kiosks. As the TEXRail station is 23 inches above the top of the tracks, TEXRail patrons would ramp up to the fully accessible platform. In the far background at the south end of the platform, you see a crew building for train crews for layovers between incoming and outgoing trains. The colors, materials, and finishes of the station will be further developed during final design. A goal for the station is a transit-oriented development. The near Southside District, the City of Fort Worth, Baylor Scott and White will be studying opportunities for future TOD. As noted earlier, other than the station platform and tracks, the remainder of the site can be developed in the future for TOD. A recent example of TOD with the TEXRail station is in Grapevine. Trinity Metro provided the TEXRail station, canopies, signage, while other developers in the city came forward with the adjacent transit-oriented development in conjunction with the TEXRail station. Iron Horse, a similar TOD, is under development adjacent to the North Richland Hills Smithfield station, which we were looking at earlier. Utilizing an earlier near Southside TOD master plan, this is a study for mixed-use development with residential, commercial, office, parking, and pedestrian connections within the site.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. So to assess environmental impacts of the project, Trinity Metro, on behalf of FTA as the lead agency, prepared an environmental assessment, or EA, in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act, otherwise known as NEPA, and FTA standard operating procedures. Specifically, EAs are prepared when actions do not result in significant environmental impacts, but when any anticipated impacts on the human and natural environment, including mitigation measures, must be disclosed. Once an EA is approved, a finding of no significant impact or FONSI is prepared. Various resources were evaluated in the EA for the project, including those listed on this slide. Based on the data collection efforts and impact analyses of these resources, as documented in the EA on the website, the majority of these resources would not be adversely impacted as a result of the project. However, a few key issues were identified, as denoted by the orange asterisks on this slide, and required thorough investigations, specific stakeholder or agency coordination, and the identification of specific mitigation measures to avoid or minimize impacts. The key issues specifically pertained to property acquisitions for the TEXRail extension alignment and near Southside station, potential parkland impacts, namely to Newby Park, potential impacts to cultural resources such as the historic railroad bridges and surrounding historic districts, and potential noise and vibration impacts to various sensitive receptors, such as residences, hospitals, hotels, school, church, a park, specifically Newby Park, as well as several medical clinics. So regarding acquisitions and displacements, partial acquisitions totaling 7/10 of an acre would be required to maintain a 20-foot distance between the proposed TEXRail track and the existing Fort Worth and Western track, and meet minimum clearance for the proposed bridge columns at Rosedale Street. In addition, for the near Southside station, partial or full portions of 26 parcels currently owned by Baylor Healthcare Systems would be acquired through a permanent easement, as only a portion of the site would be necessary for the rail platform, walkways, and bus turnaround area. The rest of the site would include transit parking and land that could be developed by Baylor Healthcare Systems in the future. And it is important to note, to minimize disruption to the Baylor Scott and White All Saints Medical Center and other nearby businesses during construction, Trinity Metro will continue ongoing coordination during final design and through construction. And lastly, no displacements would occur as a result of the TEXRail extension project, nor would the acquisitions result in disproportionate impacts to minority, low income, or limited English-speaking populations in the area, as discussed in the EA. So for cultural resources, as the project is a federal undertaking under FTA, compliance with Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act must be considered. The regulating body for Section 106 within Texas is the Texas Historical Commission, otherwise known as the THC, with whom Trinity Metro initiated consultation in November of last year. And this included the agency's approval of the proposed cultural resources study areas, which are referred to as areas of potential effects, or APEs, assessment methodologies, and a list of consulting parties, which are key stakeholders of interest pertaining to the historical resources in the area. Upon the THC's approval, a field survey was completed last spring, the results of which identified 4 historic properties consisting of 3 railroad bridges and an historic district as adversely impacted by the project. While some of these properties were covered under the Memorandum of Agreement, or MOA, from the original TEXRail project, the THC determined that 2 of the historic bridges, the 1930 TNP underpass and 1925 steel trestle bridge, were not covered and would require an amendment to the original MOA. For the amendment, Trinity Metro consulted with the THC on potential mitigation for the 2 bridges before the MOA amendment could be finalized. The mitigation includes historic American engineering record-like documentation. And what this means is it creates a documentary record of the bridge structure's engineering and industrial legacy. Also includes interpretive signage, an online virtual tour, and an historic inventory of rail-related resources located along the TEXRail corridor. This mitigation has been reviewed and approved by the consulting parties and the THC. So regarding, moving on to Parkland, so regarding impacts to parklands and recreational resources, Newby Park, as previously mentioned, is located in proximity to the project. This park is surrounded by the Fort Worth Medical District and Mistletoe Heights neighborhood. It contains various amenities such as a playscape, baseball field, walking trails, among others. And the existing Fort Worth and Western Railroad alignment is located on the eastern edge of the park, and the northern edge of Newby Park faces Rosedale Street, which is a major arterial roadway in the area. So as a result of the project, there would be no direct or constructive impacts, and access to the park would be maintained. In addition, major visual impacts to Newby Park as a result of the increase in train frequency would not be anticipated due to the park's orientation and its separation from the alignment by a buffer of mature hardwood trees. However, the increase in train frequency would result in noise impacts to Newby Park, but with mitigation, which would consist of the implementation of a quiet zone at the Mistletoe Boulevard at grade railroad crossing, this impact would be avoided, which our noise and vibration expert Dave Towers will discuss next.
Thank you, Melinda. The noise and vibration assessment for the TEXRail extension was carried out according to the guidance provided by the U.S. Federal Transit Administration in the FTA Transit Noise and Vibration Impact Assessment Manual, most recently updated in 2018. This slide outlines the major steps in the assessment methodology. The first step is to document the existing noise and vibration levels at representative sensitive locations. Second step is to predict the noise and vibration levels generated by the project based on vehicle data and the system operating plan. And the third step is to identify impacts and propose mitigation consistent with FTA guidance. FTA considers three categories of sensitive land use with impacts that are assessed based on their sensitivity. Category 1 includes land where quiet is essential to its intended purpose. Category 2 includes places where people sleep, such as residences, hotels, and hospitals. And Category 3 includes institutions with daytime and evening use, such as schools and places of worship. The existing noise conditions along the TEXRail extension were characterized based on measurements conducted at 10 locations back in March of this year. Long-term monitoring for 24-hour periods was performed at 5 locations. These are shown by the green symbols in this map, focusing on Category 2 or residential land use. And short-term monitoring for 1-hour periods was performed at the remaining 5 locations shown by the blue symbols, focusing on Category 3 or institutional land use. The next step was to predict the project noise levels and compare them to the existing noise levels at each sensitive location. Based on this comparison, noise impact was assessed using the FTA noise impact criteria described graphically in this slide as either no impact, moderate impact, or severe impact. The results of the assessment indicated that without any mitigation, there would be severe noise impacts at 206 residential locations and 4 institutional locations, as well as moderate noise impact at 2 residential locations and 3 institutional locations. The locations of these impacts are shown in this slide, where noise impacts are projected without mitigation, where the red dots denote severe impacts and the yellow dots denote moderate impacts. As shown in the figure, almost all of the impacts are severe and are at locations south of Rosedale Street. And these impacts are predicted due to the noise from horns that would normally be sounded by trains approaching the Mistletoe Boulevard grade crossing. The two impacts to the north of Rosedale Street on the right-hand side are due to noise from wheel squeal that may occur as trains traverse the sharp curve that begins at the north end or right side of the slide. Next slide. Two noise mitigation measures have been identified to address the predicted impacts. The first and most significant measure is to establish a quiet zone near the Mistletoe Boulevard grade crossing to avoid the routine sounding of horns from both TEXRail trains and freight trains. This project mitigation measure will actually provide a noise benefit by reducing the existing noise exposure in the neighborhood. To mitigate the two noise impacts that would remain after quiet zone implementation, wheel rail lubrication is proposed along the curve track section. And finally, a vibration impact assessment was also carried out according to FTA guidance. Ground-borne vibration levels were predicted based on vehicle data, along with data from measurements designed to determine the vibration transmission characteristics of the soil in the project area. As shown in this slide, vibration levels were predicted as a function of train speed and distance from the track, and then compared to the FTA criteria to assess impact. And as a result, no vibration impacts were projected, and therefore no vibration mitigation measures are required. And I'll now turn things back to Paulette.
Thank you, Dave. I'm going to go into the next steps for this project as we're wrapping up our this phase of our environmental assessment and our engineering through our 30% set of plans. Again, the 30-day comment period from November 1st to November 30th. I want to mention that all the comments that are received during this comment period will be responded to and will be an attachment to the FONSI that Melinda mentioned earlier. Stakeholder agreements are also anticipated to be wrapped up this month. Goes with the railroad's major stakeholders and Baylor Scott White. Our FONSI is anticipated mid-December, as I mentioned on our schedule before, followed by procurement for the next phase for final design, construction, and opening service, as depicted here on our milestone schedule. Again, wrapping up this phase of the project at the end of December. Bidding and procurement period would start at the end of this year through the fall of next year. Final design, spring of next year through the end of 2023. Construction beginning in early 2024 through the spring of 2026. Testing and commissioning towards the last few months of that time period, with an anticipated opening for service in spring of 2026. Lee's going to wrap things up here for public involvement.
Yes, we're so appreciative of your participation tonight and ongoing involvement. Receiving your input helps our project team identify the areas of interest and concern and to garner stronger understanding of what your community needs are. So we do not want public involvement to end this evening. So be sure to continue to review the information on the website and provide your comments there. As a reminder on how to share comments, after the public meeting, you'll be able to continue to post comments on the website. We can go to the next slide. You can put it on the website through voice messaging, through email, through the US Postal Service, and the comment period does continue through this month. Now, as we're about to take on some of the questions, a quick reminder about how to use Zoom if you've never used it before. There is a chat feature that will, on most computers, be at the bottom of your screen. And you can type your questions or comments there. We'll respond to any questions that we can. and send it to everyone so we can all be on the same page with this. Now we'll go ahead and open the question period. I see that a number of our team members have been responding to questions in the forum. But now let's take a look at some of the questions that may not have been answered just yet. And so if we can go to the next slide. We'll stay on this one. That way, I think it will help everybody. So one of the first questions captured, does the sidewalk get added all along Mistletoe to Leslie? And will streetlights and street trees be added? Now, some of this is with the transit-oriented development part of the project. But Paulette, would you like to jump in to answer about sidewalks, or should that go to Kirk?
I can answer that. We are extending the sidewalk as Kirk mentioned in his slides, all the way across Mistletoe and down Mistletoe till it reaches Leslie Street, and a sidewalk is then extends into the station site. So there will be sidewalk continuously provided on the south side of Mistletoe all the way across Mistletoe. There is also some sidewalk work being provided with the city project to extend the sidewalk, I believe, on the north side for their quiet zone when that is constructed. As far as lighting is concerned, there will be lighting at the station and landscaping provided as well at the station site.
Great, thank you. Would the 2 railroad bridges mentioned be removed?
So one of those bridges is being removed. That was that one. One was the trestle bridge, the UP trestle bridge. That was the one on the south side that we are demolishing and reconstructing a new bridge in place. The other one at Henderson is not being replaced. It's just getting some deck work done on top of it. So it's pretty minor. And there's a column, I believe, for the new track on the north side adjacent to that bridge as well. So that one will stay there.
Right, and jumping back to the question before that, will Leslie, for the sidewalk, will it go from Leslie to Jerome?
Right now, it is not planned to go to Jerome. It's planned to go, I can't remember exactly how many feet on the west side of Mistletoe.
But Paulette, this is John. I might jump in here and say that the city of Fort Worth has they have plans in place to extend the sidewalk network up into the neighborhood.
And here's it's kind of a double question. Someone looking for some additional figures in the EA, something that they were looking for, and to what extent in general did the EA include consideration of the TOD?
So within the traffic report or within the EA regarding traffic, sorry, I should turn my camera back on. Here we go. There is a very extensive report. One of our appendices talks about physical resources. We've got 3 different appendices that kind of break up the detailed studies that we completed for the projects for each of our resource areas. And certainly transportation and traffic is one of those. So while I don't have that open in front of me to give the specific, I think you're asking about traffic counts in that question, there is a wealth of information in that report to help provide, response and a little bit more clarity on that question. What was the next one after that, Lee?
The EA, including the considerations for the TOD.
So with TOD, that is, at this point in time, the proposed action is based on the extension itself. TOD in the EA, if you look at the copy of it, that is provided on the website, it refers to future implementation of transit-oriented development. We did not assess direct impacts of TOD at this point in time.
Okay. I'm going to merge 2 questions together, and this will probably go to John and or Chad. Has the construction contract procurement method been determined, and is there a participation goal for women-owned businesses?
Thank you. Well, I guess I can't turn on my video, but oh, there we go. Yes, no, we're still, we have not decided the procurement method yet. And right now there is no set asides for WBE. The goals for that the FTA will be looking for will be disadvantaged business enterprises, DBEs.
All right, thank you. How many cars did the study measure on the 2200 block of Mistletoe? How many more predicted with the station, and how many more with the completed transit-oriented development? So that's a lot of questions together there.
So I will take a stab at this. We obviously, based on what, I'll start with the latter question about the TOD. We did not study the TOD, any parking or any traffic impacts for TOD. That would be part of that study. We do have an extensive traffic study. We did counts in the field. And this is primarily a majority of the ridership. I think it's about 85% is pedestrian ridership, walk-up riders utilizing the station. So traffic is not expected or based on the modeling that was done for the project. And again, that's reflected in that traffic report, expected to lower any levels of service in the area at the intersections that are adjacent to the station.
Thank you. What type of, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Lee, if I could just add to Paulette's comment very quickly. So, you know, the TOD is uncertain at this time. You know, this is something outside the scope of this particular project, and it's undetermined on the size of the TOD, the makeup of the TOD. So it's very difficult for us to determine any kind of vehicle impacts at this point in time on this particular project. So we don't want you to not think we're not considering it in the process, but it's at this point undetermined on what it will look like in the future. So that's where this follow-up study that near Southside is working on with Mayor Scott and White and Trinity Metro and the city to help determine what that will look like in the future.
Thanks, Chad. Two funding questions. I'll just start with the first one. What type of FTA funding is being considered for the project?
Well, right now, we've been authorized to use the underrun that we had on the TEXRail project, which is approximately $80 million, 40 of which is federal funding. I'll just say 50%. There may be other federal funds involved. Right now, we're using CMAQ funds to fund this study and other studies, or in the agreements that we reached with the railroads. So there may be other federal funding opportunities that are out there to do it, but I mean, we will still have to get our local match. So.
And John, I'll also add that we've coordinated, Trinity Metro has coordinated with the North Central Texas Council of Governments in pursuing a RAISE grant as well. So that will provide some additional funds.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Chad. Yeah.
And thank you, because that answered the follow-up question, which was, in addition to the remaining grant funds, are any additional federal funds required? I believe you answered that. Okay. Will bike share station be added here? Kurt, or?
Yes, that's our desire, is to add a bike station here as well.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah. I mean, those electric bikes are great. So.
Okay. I believe we have addressed all the questions, either through responding written on the chat Oh, here's a new one. What is the total cost? Can you clarify the total cost of the project and all funding sources?
Well, you know what? If I pulled out my crystal ball and determine what the inflation is going to be when we begin construction on this, I wouldn't be working right now. So, but yeah, we have a cost estimate. It's currently in development. I think the last time that it was developed, it was in the neighborhood of, what was it, Paulette? 170,
179, I think.
179 million. Yeah.
And that was a few months ago.
Yeah.
Like you
That was a few
mentioned,
months
so-
ago. That's before we had the 30% inflation hit, I guess, just recently. So.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, if I skipped a question, we'll give you just a minute longer. If you don't mind copying and pasting, if you did not receive a verbal or written response, give me just a moment to make sure that we got to everybody. Okay, so elaborating on the last question, funding sources besides federal, are there any?
Yes.
Do you want that, John, or you want me to take it?
Well, we have to have a local match. So, yeah, I mean, there are other funding sources besides, I mean, there could be county, there could be local, Trinity Metro. There's many different pots that we will attempt to dip into. And Chad, if you want to elaborate on that, I'd be more than happy.
Well, I'll just mention that certainly we've identified dollars from the agency to be spent on this project, and then we're working with the city for funds as well, and then also the county. So as John said, it's going to be a variety of sources to make this important project happen.
All right. We see no additional comments. So we will close the comment period and turn it over to Chad.
All right. Well, I get to wrap up tonight and really just thank everybody for participating tonight, spending your evening with us, and learning a little bit more about the project. As Lee and Paulette had said, our public comment period is open until November 30th, and the comments that are identified here in the chat will be included in the environmental document. And so those are very helpful for us as we are making our way through the virtual world of public meetings at this point in time still. And so you can see on the screen there is the contact information, and then the web address to be able to get to the TEXRail planning website, where you can submit those additional comments, or you can put them in with emails as well. So we certainly appreciate your time and your questions, and you guys have a great night. Thank you.